So with that said, and that joke falling flat, I'm going to move on to our poll. And we've done a ton of talking about end of life. The main question I have for the poll is, we move to what's the most frequent decision. And I know a lot of people have dealt with end of life and we talked about it. Is it just that people don't have a lot of tough decisions, and then when they do, it's end of life? Is it that they actually have a lot of end of life decisions? We had 3 out of the 7 pollees, again, then not statistically significant, said end of life. Anybody with thoughts on that more than we've talked about already?
So I've definitely changed my vote because you changed the question and I read the question too fast. So, yep. I would, because I think I went with the end of life as a tough decision.
Yeah.
But you said the most frequent type, and that certainly isn't so frequent. So yeah, it would be on the third one.
The strategy, roadmap, and prioritization.
Yeah, I agree with that, Jason. It's like, if it's talking about frequent, you don't frequently kill things.
Yeah. Or you've got some people who are so good that the only tough decisions they have to make is killing things.
That's true.
Right.
Who has the frequency of hiring and firing, or at least
this is going to be Greg. This is he called me out on this one, and I agree. If I could go back and change it, I would say it. Hiring and firing was very much a product leader thing, and to Greg's point, that's there's 2 totally different types of decisions. So nobody voted for it anyways. Product lifecycle related, and this is a place where I differentiated end of life, which is a specific thing, in product lifecycle, which is changing how you handle something based on where it is in the life cycle. Has anybody ever had to deal with, outside of myself, had to deal with a product lifecycle decision that wasn't end of life?
I think we have, but the end game was end of life. So it was a change in the product's life cycle to get to that point, knowing that that's where we were headed. So we weren't quite there yet, but there was no chance for resuscitation, honestly.
Okay. For me, it's about how do you change how you engage with the market, the product lifecycle. In my head, everything sounds great in my head. It was about how do you make decisions about shifting from inception and product market fit to the hyper growth stuff of what do you do and how do you prioritize features, who do you engage with when you're hyper growth, versus now as you come out of it into maturity and the different type of decisions you need to make. I guess all of those will end up with, if you do it right, all of them end up probably with a sunset or EOL decision. But sometimes it's about shifting the priorities of the product based on where you are in that cycle. And that's sort of where my head was with that.
Would that also relate to, like, you're trying a product knowing it's very early in the entire consumer consumption model? It kind of fits in both of those. Well, I launched out like OTT products well before we could figure out how to monetize on all those things, just to get it out there, get the name out, get the engagement, and then figure out later how we're actually going to predictably make money on all of that.
Yeah,
it's one of those, you had to be there, otherwise you're just an also ran. And then, like, to John's point, it's like sometimes you just have to go and sit back and go, okay, that was great, but should we continue?
Yeah, exactly. Well, but also part of it's, who do you launch a product, you've got an initial group of initial customers. Who do you listen to when you prioritize features to add? Those small group of customers who represent 10% of the potential market, or the 90% of the potential market who hasn't bought yet, right? How do you shift your prioritization? I think about this now. I would have replaced hiring and firing personnel with starting a second growth curve, or your next growth curve. Because one of the toughest decisions is, it's not end of life yet, but when do you start the next one? Because you can't start it at end of life. It's way too late. Where do you get to with starting that? John, Google being the king of killing things, do you normally is it killing it because the problem is not there, the market doesn't have it, or is it, how do you make decisions on the next thing to do?
There's always plenty of ideas about the next things to do. And so we try to do whatever research we can to figure out what the next best thing to do is.
Okay.
In the case of, like, when we killed Inbox, we took a great number of those features and then back, incorporated them into Gmail, and basically re-architected Gmail in a pretty significant way, keeping the things from Inbox that people really liked. And then from there, the next giant evolution that I don't know if you guys have noticed or not, but this whole Google Workspace making, you know, Gmail sort of this hub of work for everybody is like, you know, realizing that the writing's on the wall with chat companies and video conferencing, and
Yeah.
having 27 different things to go to, you know, to get your work done is too much, and just trying to make it better for our users. And it's a huge effort, right? Obviously, hundreds of engineers working to make this integrated experience work. But hopefully it is the next best thing to do.
Well,
And we did lots of
that's the
testing.
that's the next growth curve, going from these independent standalone solutions to this integrated, you know, Office suite, as you know, to use
Yeah.
the former example.